Now, another man made of metal is the leader of the United Kingdom Independence Party, Nigel Farage, with whom I had a very brief alliance in the run-up to the referendum result, but without whom there wouldn't have been a referendum, as I said earlier. Nigel, are you on the line?
George, good evening.
Good evening to you. Now, I've been saying tonight, Nigel, I don't know if you have the same view, we'll soon see, that the Conservative leaders of the official Leave campaign are giving the impression that they didn't really mean it. And so I'm here to ask you, are we really exiting the European Union or not?
Well, George, the reason that we had an alliance together in the Grassroots Out campaign, and the reason that we put our own bid together, is that we actually meant it. And we were suspicious from the very beginning. There was talk about double referendums, about voting no to get a better deal. I have to confess, George, I was euphoric on Friday morning. You know, one of the biggest beatings the establishment has ever taken in British political history. And here I am on Monday evening, a little bit nervous, because I think Boris is backtracking. We have Conservative MEPs like Daniel Hannan backtracking. And I'm worried. And we're just going to have to keep the pressure on them. We really are.
Yes, although, of course, there's now the massive distractions of leadership campaigns in both of the major parties. In fact, you and I are the only two political leaders in the land, it seems, that are not yet under leadership challenge. Although in your case, there's always a bit of a rumble. Nigel, what can we do to keep the pressure on? After all, you're not in Parliament, I'm not in Parliament. In a way, the establishment are still in charge of the process, even though the people delivered them quite a thrashing last Thursday.
Yeah, I mean, look, the results caused turmoil. It's got rid of the Prime Minister. It's got rid of the British Commissioner. I'm even told Mr Juncker now, the head of the Commission, is under serious pressure, and Jeremy Corbyn's having a miserable time. So, things have been shaken up. The question is really back with the voters. If they're let down, then maybe at by-elections or the next general election, they will continue to vote against the establishment. I mean, the one big irony, George, in all of this, is that if Jeremy Corbyn had spoken out for a Leave vote, the Labour Party would now be in a great position with the British public.
Indeed. If he had, or even if he'd taken the Harold Wilson line of saying, well, Labour members are free to speak their own mind, and here's my mind. It's the same as it's been for the last 45 years. Then he would have been in a much stronger position. Because, of course, it's the Remainiacs that are now trying to destroy him because he didn't quite do a passionate enough job persuading people of the wonders of the EU. When, of course, Jesus, I know he's JC, but Jesus himself could not have persuaded the poor and the workless and the people under such pressure out there in post-industrial Britain, in the wasteland. Nobody could have persuaded them of the wonders of the European Union, because for them those wonders don't exist.
No, and of course, this is the irony, isn't it, that this battle that is going on within Labour and the Labour parliamentarians, Blairite, many of them, of course, who want to replace Corbyn, don't seem to understand that even if they do, and we get another Remainiac, as you call them, actually Labour's electoral prospects in many of those post-industrial parts of the North and the Midlands, and South Wales and Scotland for that matter, I tell you what, George, they look doomed to me.
Well, I mean, there's a real danger and a real irony that many of the leading coup plotters are members of Parliament for constituencies that themselves voted overwhelmingly to leave.
Yes, that's right. And I don't know, I've got a funny feeling about this. When people like Stephen Kinnock, people like David Lammy, say we should ignore the will of the people in this referendum. Just maybe at the next election, they're going to be in for a huge shock. And maybe that seismic wave that we felt on Friday morning could continue for some years to come.
Well, there's been a petition got up, of course, which isn't worth the paper it isn't written on, because it's an electronic petition. Turns out that 39,000 people living in Vatican City appended their names to it. But however many have signed it, the idea that you could get a petition to overturn the result of a referendum in which 33 million people voted, and we won by 1.25 million of a majority. I mean, this is maniac. This is re-maniac.
Yeah, no, it is. And as I keep telling people, it was never supposed to be the best of three. You know, it was a referendum that everybody made clear, including David Cameron, using 9 million quid's worth of our money to put a leaflet through every door. We said on the last page, this is it. Whatever you decide is what the result is. So let's ignore petitions. Let's ignore protests. Let's understand that all of this is backed up by the multinationals, the merchant banks, and indeed big politics, because they're upset we've taken their toys away from them. So now what we have to do, and certainly what I have to do, is to see who is going to stand for the next Tory leader, and we'll know on Thursday what the short list is. And I shall certainly be encouraging people to vote for the most pro-Brexit of those contenders.
I mean, let's assume for a minute that Boris wins it. I was making the point earlier, which seemed to have been forgotten during the campaign, that when the journalists were on his doorstep on the night that he announced that he'd be campaigning to leave, no one knew whether he was going to come out and say one thing or the other. And indeed, he had written 2 columns for the Daily Telegraph the next morning, one for and one against staying in the EU. Do you think that the people who are going to elect him, if they do, are going to put up with this kind of stasis, a period of years in which we get bogged down in all the technicalities? Meanwhile, we still comply with each and every bad thing about the European Union that Johnson urged people to vote leave as a result. I mean, were all these things so bad, but we're going to go on doing them year after year?
I mean, Boris has the chance to prove in the course of the next couple of weeks and months whether he's a great man or whether he is one of those politicians who gets blown around with the wind, short-term public opinion, and being lobbied by his own party. Let's hope he shows us that he's a man of metal. I don't know whether he is. He's got his chance to prove it. But frankly, I think a lot of backbench Tories just simply would not put up with the Leave vote not being honoured. And I just think, George, there are all sorts of ways. You know, we could find at the next general election, there could be an alliance of people from different political parties campaigning simply on the one issue that we must leave.
That's a possibility. And the Liberal Democrats have said, in fact, that their campaign is going to be to rejoin. Now, my last question to you, because I know you want to get away to the football, is this. If the European Union continues in its current trajectory, is there going to be a European Union in 3 years' time for the Liberals to take us back into, or for Nicola Sturgeon to try and persuade the Scottish people that they should leave Britain and join the Eurozone?
I can't tell you how long it's going to take, but I can tell you that the European Union has failed everybody. It is dying. Right across, from north to south to east to west, parties on the left, the right and the centre who are Eurosceptic are gaining in momentum. And just as sure as we've scored this great victory, for the ordinary people, the little people in the United Kingdom, there's more to come. And I anticipate referendums on leaving coming up in Denmark, the Netherlands, and other countries. So either way, at some point in time, this project's dead. I just hope that we don't prolong the agony.
OK, here's a quick question on Twitter for you. Ask Nigel what he thinks of Scottish Indy 2. As I think, as things stand, the Scottish people are not getting what we voted for. What's your take on that?
I get a bit cheesed off with the use of this word independence. The United Kingdom last Thursday night voted for independence. If she has a second referendum, she's actually asking the Scots to vote against independence and effectively sign up as a province of a European state with the euro. We need to change the language in Scotland to get through to people that the SNP are perpetrating a massive, massive con on people.
Nigel Farage, thank you very much indeed for joining us when England are struggling against the mighty Iceland on television at the same time. Many thanks indeed, the leader of UKIP, Nigel Farage. Now, well, let's recap on one or two of the things that Nigel Farage said. He concurred, in my view, though not as strongly, I think, as I feel it, that the current Tory runners and riders are actually one variant or another of people who actually didn't mean it when they campaigned for exit from the European Union. They have something else in mind. First of all, a long period of very detailed negotiation with the outcome something like Norway, where you are not actually in the European Union, you don't actually participate in the meetings of the European Union, but you continue to pay them the money and you continue to follow all of their rules, including the rules on free movement of labour.